All right, what is good, ladies and gentlemen, is the Master Reviewer back again with another review, and today we're doing a review for How to Train Your Dragon. This is a rewatch for me, is in preparation for a viewer recommendation, and I'll just start off by saying that this is one of my favorite animated movies of all time, and I can gladly say that on rewatch it did not get any worse. And so, yeah, we will just get into it, starting off with the plot. So the plot of this film is that basically the protagonist, Hiccup, he is a Viking in a village of Vikings, and he is the scrawny Viking. No one really believes that he is a true Viking. He's kind of more of he's more intelligent rather than strong, if anything. So, he's kind of the misunderstood genius archetype, where he ends up at the start of the film, he builds this machine, so instead of having to throw these ropes to catch dragons, where they live in Berk, which is a town, it's a Viking village basically, that is constantly getting raided by dragons. So the whole thing about the town is that they're very proud Vikings that fight and kill dragons and stuff, and Hiccup wants to be a proud Viking that everyone respects and stuff. So he builds this invention in order to help him throw a lasso to catch a dragon, and his ultimate goal is to catch and kill a Night Fury, which is the most elusive dragon. Pretty much no one's ever seen one, and they are so fast that you can't see them, and they are extreme, they're the most, they're the most difficult dragon to catch, and they're also the most dangerous one basically. So Hiccup ends up, this is a bit they didn't do the best job of portraying this, I'll be honest, where he does, man, he shoots off his machine once, and somehow it was the perfect shot to catch the Night Fury, who later on we get introduced to him as Toothless. So yeah, anyway, so Hiccup ends up finding this Night Fury in the woods named Toothless, and then he is going to kill him, but then ultimately he decides he can't go through with it, and so he ends up freeing the Night Fury, and then Night Fury ends up leaving. So throughout the film, Hiccup goes back and forth to the forest to visit Toothless, and over the course of the film, they end up growing a friendship. They form a bond basically. Hiccup throughout the film is constantly helping. I think Hiccup injured Toothless when he captured him, so because of that, I think Toothless lost part of his wings that he needs to fly, so Hiccup ends up repairing his wings and stuff, and then they end up actually bonding to the point where they are flying together, where Hiccup is riding Toothless, and so, but that's throughout the film. That's half of the plot basically, and then the other half is that Toothless is, not Toothless, I'm getting their names confused for some reason, Hiccup, because no one really, everyone thinks that he's not a true Viking and stuff. There is Gobber, who is the kind of mentor in a way of Toothless, and then there is Stoic, to the Vast, aka Hiccup's. Am I saying Toothless still? His name is Hiccup. I don't know why. I don't know. Toothless just comes to mind more often than Hiccup does, I guess, for some reason. But Gobber is Hiccup's mentor, and then Stoic is Hiccup's father, and so the Vikings, led by Stoic, they are the entire film trying to find the nest of dragons in order to defeat them once and for all. And Gobber, he is running a training camp for soon-to-be Viking warriors. So Hiccup ends up joining the camp along with all these other teenage Vikings, basically, and throughout the course of the camp, Hiccup starts off not really fitting in, but then over the course, as he learns more about dragons and how to handle them and stuff and tame them, he becomes the best cadet basically at the camp, and ultimately he is chosen to go through a ritual in order to kill a dragon and become a true Viking. So that ends up happening. And what happens after that? Let me think. I'm losing my train of thought here a bit. So eventually it gets to the point where the ritual does arrive, and Hiccup has to go. Oh, actually, before that happens, I think Astrid, she is the love interest of Hiccup, and she is the one that is kind of, before Hiccup became the best at taming the dragon, she was the one that was she was going to be the one that was going to probably end up becoming the true Viking and getting to kill the dragon. She was the best from the teenage Vikings and stuff. So she ends up spying on Hiccup to find out what's really going on, how he all of a sudden became so good at defeating dragons, and so she ends up finding out about Toothless basically. So Hiccup takes her on a ride on Toothless, and so basically he shows her that Toothless is not a threat and stuff, and this leads to her kind of being on his side for the rest of the film. And so the final ritual happens where, I'm saying ritual, it's just this kind of, I don't know, traditional fight that a teenage Viking, I guess, goes through and kills a dragon for the first time in order to become a true Viking, I guess. So Hiccup, he goes through with it, but then he, when he does it, he's not actually trying to kill the dragon that he's facing. He is trying to show everyone that these dragons can be tamed, but because Stoic is very against dragons and stuff, he very much wants to, he doesn't believe that they can be tamed. He ends up scaring the dragon, and it leads to chaos just ensuing. Toothless ends up showing up, he ends up getting involved and trying to stop Stoic, but then Hiccup stops Toothless from killing Stoic, and then from there, Toothless ends up getting captured. There's like a kind of a fight between Hiccup and his father Stoic, and there's this really good line where basically to justify like the fact that the fact that the Vikings are going after the dragons, Stoic, he says they've killed hundreds of us, and then right after to not Toothless, why do I keep getting their names confused? Hiccup, he says, and we've killed thousands of them. I thought that was a really good line that does a great job of portraying how like endless conflicts, like the nature of them, where it's like, yeah, you're always going to be upset at these people, like because they've wronged you, but at the same time you're wronging them also to a very large extent. So these conflicts are never going to end if you just keep on going on. So I think that was a very, very good line to really like hammer home the fact that like these conflicts are very much just out of control and they never lead to anything except more death and stuff. So I think that was a good line. And then from there, Toothless, he is captured, and then Stoic ends up finding out from like Hiccup accidentally reveals that basically dragons are the only ones that are able to find the dragon nest, and so Stoic, these names, Jesus Christ, these names are like, they're Viking names, I guess, so they're a bit more confusing to remember than normal, but even so, this is like more difficult to remember. That I just reviewed A Whisker Away, which is like Japanese names, and I would think like these are somewhat unique names they're not like Nordic or something, it's just like, I mean, maybe they're somewhere in Nordic, but these names are somehow more difficult to remember than the names from A Whisker Away, which I thought would be more difficult, so yeah, I don't know why I'm having trouble with these names, but anyway, so yeah, Stoic ends up finding out that the way to find the dragon nest is to have a dragon lead them there, so Stoic goes along with the rest of the Vikings in order, using Toothless to guide them to the dragon nest, and meanwhile, Hiccup, he is going to like give up basically, but then Astrid kind of has a talk with him, and she says like, why didn't you kill Toothless? And he said there's like a conversation him saying how he didn't kill him because Toothless was scared and stuff, and he saw himself in Toothless, and so eventually he says like, okay, I'm going to do something crazy, and then basically Hiccup takes all of the teenage Vikings to the dragons that are being held in the training area, and he teaches them how to tame them basically, and so the teenage Vikings, all the teenage Vikings, they go to the final confrontation where basically they get to the nest. All of the, I forgot to even mention earlier, but at some point earlier when Astrid and Hiccup, when Hiccup was showing Astrid that Toothless is not a threat, that's how they actually found in the first place where the dragon nest was. So anyway, so the Vikings make it to the dragon nest, and then all of the dragons, they get scared off. Like once the actual mountain is broken, all the other dragons, they leave. But then there is still the Red Death, which is the main queen dragon. That is the one that is like forcing all the other dragons to bring her food, basically. So so the final, basically, like all the Vikings, they realize we're kind of screwed. We can't fight this thing. But this is the final act of the film where all of the Viking teenagers, they arrive with their dragons, and the final fight ensues. Goes down and stuff. Eventually it culminates with Toothless and Hiccup versus the Red Death in a one-on-one, and they ultimately manage to defeat it by, like earlier in the film, I think Hiccup kind of learned that dragons are vulnerable when they actually open their mouth to fire off a blast, so Hiccup and Toothless manages to get a fire blast off while the Red Death was like charging up a shot to shoot them with. So the Red Death is defeated, but in the process, like there's a huge explosion from his defeat, or her defeat actually, and so I think Hiccup gets hurt in the process, so he loses a leg, but he is still alive. Toothless saved him, and then the film ends with basically Hiccup seeing that he has a prosthetic leg now, and everything's good in Burkbo now. All the dragons, they're at peace with the Vikings, and the Vikings are now they're utilizing the dragons, they're taming them, they're riding them, and they are using them for they're not at war anymore. So that is how the film ends. And yeah, that is the plot of the film. So overall, I would give the plot, I'm going to give it a 5 out of 5. I think that this plot is really good. I really liked it, of just the aspect of this character that no one believes like he's anything special or anything. He is the one that actually ends up becoming the greatest when dealing with dragons, and just the course of the film where Hiccup grows close with Toothless. I thought that was very good. The aspect of like the endless war conflict going on between the Vikings and the dragons, I thought it was good. Just overall, like everything I explained. I always feel like after I recap the plot, I need to like kind of explain why I think it's so good, but I just, based on what I said, it's just I probably didn't do a great job of recapping it, but even so, the plot, I loved it. I think that this is one of my favorite plots from an animated film, definitely in terms of like DreamWorks. I think that this is, I don't know if it's my favorite DreamWorks plot, but it is definitely one of my favorite DreamWorks plots, so I'm going to give it a 5 out of 5. In terms of the characters, I think that Hiccup is a good protagonist. Like at first he wants to just gain the respect of everyone, but over the course of the film he no longer cares about respect, and he has a actually good, more noble goal of basically ending the conflict between the Vikings and the dragons. I think that was good. Astrid, she is also good as I guess she is the one that like is the best. Everyone kind of respects her, but then as Hiccup becomes more so famous around Berk, then she kind of gets jealous, but then she ends up finding out the truth and stuff. And so I thought that she ends up, by the end of the film, she convinces him to actually like step up and not give up on saving all the dragons and stuff. So I thought that she was good. Stoic, I thought that he was also good, portraying like a good job of portraying this parent that like he loves his son, but at the same time it's like he does kind of have expectations for him where he's not going to where he turns into a real Viking, and he does kind of, he's like very much kind of in the belief that, you know, you need to kill dragons to be a real Viking and stuff. If you're not killing dragons, you're not a real Viking. And so he is a bit disappointed and embarrassed by Hiccup, but then over the course of the film, like by the end, he does end up realizing the true strength that Hiccup displays by not by killing dragons, but by actually taming them and utilizing and like creating peace between humans, dragons. He realizes that in itself is like a strength, and ultimately he is like he's not like an embarrassment. He's like actually really like the aspects that make him special are something to be celebrated, I guess. So I think that Stoic was good. Gobber, he was the mentor of like he was like the one kind of that was teaching all of the teenage Vikings. I thought that he was good, pretty entertaining. I like the the training sequences; those were pretty good, I would say. Also, the moments between him and Stoic, where it's like where they're discussing like stuff about Hiccup, I thought that those were good as well. Let's hear the other Viking teenagers. They were fine, but they're more so meant to be, I think, for comedic relief, and they weren't like the funniest. But I did like, I guess the role that they served in the film's fine, as being just these other Viking teenagers to kind of either make fun of Hiccup or like start praising Hiccup when he does well. Ultimately, it's like they themselves are the ones that help save the day at the end by taming the dragons and stuff. So the Viking teenagers, they were fine, I would say. Hiccup himself, not Hiccup, sorry, Toothless, the dragon, I think that he was also good. I like the bond, once again, that was formed between him and Hiccup and stuff. So I thought that, yeah, Toothless was great. And overall, they're yeah, all the characters that are really prominent, I guess, which it's basically just the Viking teenagers, Stoic, Bogger, I keep forgetting his name for some reason as well. Hiccup, Toothless, and I guess the other dragon. The dragons are cool. I do like the dragons. Like all of them, I have like a unique trait to them, pretty much all of them. But they all, no, that I don't know why I said but there, but all of them have like unique traits to them. But all of them can be like tamed through the right methods and stuff. So I do think that, yeah, the dragons themselves are good. So overall, the characters, I'm going to give probably like between an 8 to an 8.5. I would say that they were between great and amazing, I would say. And I'm probably going to give them, I'm going to be a bit harsh. I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10, great characters. And yeah, in terms of the settings, so it takes place on Berk, which I think that Berk is a pretty cool island, like Viking setting. It does look pretty good, I would say. There's like some forest areas, which are also nice. I don't really like the final confrontation area. It's just this like kind of barren shore area that's like outside of a mountain. So it's not my favorite location, but everything before that I did like a lot. Even the flying settings, I think that those were pretty good. And so overall, these settings, I'm going to probably give a, let me think here. I think I'll give the settings like a, honestly, probably like another 8 out of 10, I would say. Like very great settings, and yeah, they're very good Viking themes settings, and just overall 8 out of 10, I would say. In terms of the visuals, this came out in 2010, so honestly, the animation looks decent. Like the art style, it doesn't feel too dated. It definitely feels, you know, not like what we have nowadays, but it definitely, I liked it. I would say I would probably give the art style I'm thinking like a 7.5. I'm thinking like very good art style, very good visuals. I would say just any time that like the dragons are using their abilities or whatever, I think it looks very good. The fire blasts, the actual like the flying sequences, I think that it is all very good visuals, and I did like it. I do think it gets a bit more interesting in the next film, where the dragons get maybe a bit more unique, and there's like a bit more action that goes on in the next film. So, but yeah, I would say that this film has very good visuals, I would say. In terms of the worst thing, I don't really have anything in mind. I think, yeah, nothing too much, I would say. I think maybe just I don't know, maybe the final sequence of like Hiccup and Toothless versus the Red Death. It's not, like, I don't know, for the final confrontation, it doesn't feel as interesting as some of the rest of the film. That sequence, I guess, wasn't the most interesting for some reason, in my opinion, so. But even so, it was still like I'd still give it like above average. So I'll go 6 out of 10 for the final fight between, like I did like the ending where the Red Death actually gets defeated, but just the build up is just kind of, their plan is to just go into the clouds where the Red Death can't see them, and so it just felt not the most, I don't know, it didn't feel the coolest, I would say, for a final confrontation, but even so, I'd still say it's like above average, I would say. So In terms of the best thing I will probably, I think I'll reuse the score for the plot, which I gave a 5 out of 5, so I'll go another 5 out of 5 for the plot, because yeah, this was really I love this plot. I think that this plot was fantastic, and so another 5 out of 5 for the plot. And I already mentioned all of the extra notes, so I'm going to do the calculations. So King Crimson. All right, so it ends up coming out to an 8.25, which would be between an 8 to an 8.5, which would be between great and amazing. And I would definitely, I think, give it higher than that. I think I would probably give this film, honestly, between like an 8.5 to a 9. I would say it's between amazing and incredible. And I think the first time I watched it, I would have given it a 9 out of 10. I think just the fact that this isn't my first rewatch. I think this is like at least my, I think it's not my second rewatch. I think it's like my third rewatch by now, and so at least my third rewatch. And so I think it's better the first time around, and just the more you watch it, just like the fact that I don't know, it's not as good the first time around as it was after. Even so, I would still say that the film is at least. I'm not going to give a concrete score. I'm just going to call it between an 8.5 to a 9. I think that this film is between amazing and incredible. I'll need to let it marinate in order to give a more concrete score, but for now I'm just going to call it between an 8.5 to a 9. I would say that this film, yeah, was between amazing and incredible. So yeah, that is pretty much all there is to it. So if you have any recommendations, any shows, movies, video game stories, anime, manga, web series, anything that you want me to review, leave it in the comments and I will maybe possibly check it out. With that said, that is pretty much all there is to it, so let's leave it at that.